Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today chilling, quite literally, in the frozen streets of NYC inside of the Division. I wanted to bring you guys a bit of an agent update. Talk a little bit about a build that I'm currently developing. It is very much work in progress, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing the finished product and sharing it with you guys in an agent build video. And I also wanted to sit down with you guys and talk about where and how I obtained each of my favorite high-end weapons. That's been a big question that I've been seeing all over the place in the Caduceus review, the Liberator review, the Dark Zone videos. Everybody's like, how'd you get that first wave M1A? How'd you get the Caduceus? Where did it drop from? How do I get one? So I wanted to briefly gloss over that before I share the updated work-in-progress build that I'm developing. So let's start with that. Running a slightly more darker and sleek loadout, trying to go with a bit of urban camouflage, although I recognize I should probably break up my silhouette a little bit more, but I figured that's what the blue and gold and the Caduceus is for. So let's head on in and talk about the Caduceus. You guys are going to notice, obviously, big changes to my attributes and my health and skill power unless you've been really paying attention through the last couple of videos. A lot of you guys who maybe just came here directly from the Caduceus video will notice the increase in everything considering the amount of time that has passed since I built that video. So many people asking me in the Caduceus review, why is your firearms so low? Why is this so low? Well, number one, if somebody wants to build a low firearms build, you know, let it be. That's what they want to do. You're not going to change how they want to play the game. But at that point in time, I had just hit level 30. Like, I did not have anywhere near the level of equipment that I have now. Things just weren't the same, and that's why that number was so low. Not that I aim for high DPS. I am somebody who is much more focused on potential hit damage through critical hit chance. That's something I've really been trying to boost with the Caduceus. But my Caduceus, for me, was fortunate enough to drop off of a hard mode boss. It was actually the very first hard mode daily I ever ran. It was the Times Square mission. It dropped, I saw gold, I screamed, it was Caduceus, and I was the happiest man alive for that moment. I was really stoked about that. My brother was stoked about it, and interestingly enough, the review of the Caduceus is the video that brought a lot of you to this channel, I know. It's also one of the highest performing Division videos I've made, so the fates aligned, and it was a very amazing series of fortunate events that I was able to obtain that Caduceus so early on. Yeah, it just worked out that way. I never farmed Bullet King, not into that at all. Frankly, I didn't even know about Bullet King until after he went away. I'm not somebody who looks for exploits. I simply play the game at my own pace. Stuff drops for me, and I get lucky like that. And I was very lucky when I managed to get my hands on this high-end first wave M1A. All of the high-end weapons that I have held on to or that I have fallen in love with were obtained within the first several days of me focusing on endgame content. So the Caduceus was my very first ever daily hard mode. This SOCOM style M1A DMR dropped for me off of the boss near the library. It was one of the first places I really started going to on occasion when I was just pushing for, like, you know, level 31, item level 31 gear. So I couldn't go too far into the Dark Zone, and I was just soloing. I hopped on over the fence, headed on in there with my Caduceus, tore down a bunch of the guys by myself. Eventually another player showed up and killed the boss with me, and this beautiful, beautiful creation dropped into my hands. And I have to say, it's probably one of the most ridiculous damage-dealing weapons in my arsenal. The amount of damage that this thing does, considering its rate of fire, is absolutely absurd. Not to mention, it has 166% headshot damage bonus on it. It also has balanced as a talent, which means I can just pretty much have instant accuracy, and I'm also able to run commanding. So every kill performed while the signature skill is active extends its duration by 18%. It is freaking awesome. Next up, we have the Midas, which was also a very early Dark Zone drop for me. I actually got this off of, I can't remember the exact boss, I'm going to be completely honest. I almost want to say it was at the library once again, but I don't believe it was. I think it was another named boss pushing closer to the level 31 area of the Dark Zone. I think I got this about a week after I started running endgame content, and it was actually shortly after the Caduceus review went up, because there were a lot of people talking about the Midas, and then one dropped for me seriously like days after that. I was very excited about it. I think it's a wicked, cool looking, you know, I love like the sort of Mac 10 design. It just looks cool, you know, and I like the idea of it being gold. Of course, a lot of you guys have pointed out, named, you know, potentially after King Midas. the man who touched and turned everything into gold. Running it with the only green laser sight I've been able to find. It looks awesome. I love green lasers. I don't know, there's just something fun about them. They're very sort of action film, old school Call of Duty for... I just really dig them. They're fun. So, not like an incredibly memorable drop for the Midas, or for the first wave M1A. I mean, I kind of just, you know, they dropped. I was able to extract them with relative ease because I was in such a low-level zone. And admittedly, I think it was still early on for most people in terms of their activity in the Dark Zone. The only really interesting one has to be the Caduceus at the end of the day. What I'd like to point out, though, is probably my all-time favorite superior weapon, and that is my Tactical Super 90 SBS. I've had this for an insane amount of time in the game at this point. It is item level 31. I had this, and I also had a Marine Super 90, and this beat it out just a little bit in terms of damage numbers. I think this is sitting at 42.5k now, whereas the Marine Super 90 I had was sitting at like 41. So I ended up tossing the Super 90, or the Marine Super 90, and going with the tactical one, which I did actually enjoy. I like the extendable stock on it. I like its overall appearance. I think it is pretty wicked cool looking. I've got the red tape camo on it. And overall, it's a beast. Running some pretty solid mods. It's got a rapid reload magazine with the quick release on it. So we've got critical hit chance, also increased reload speed. It just makes it a really, really fun shotgun. And like I said, I really enjoy its visual appearance, the overall design of the weapon with the red dot on it, and my foregrip. It just looks wicked cool. So there you go, guys. Those are my favorite weapons in my loadout right now, and the stories behind how and where I obtained them. Now, I want to point out that none of the weapons that I've shown you so far, except for, I believe, the high-end first wave M1A, actually, I don't know if that has a blueprint yet, have a blueprint. Caduceus doesn't have a blueprint. Midas doesn't have a blueprint. I haven't seen a blueprint for the shotgun yet, not that that really matters for most of you. They were simply drops out in the world, and if you want to get your hands on any of these, you're going to have to head out into the Dark Zone or run dailies, whether they be challenge mode or hard mode, and hope that it just happens to drop for you. That's simply all there is to it. So let's move forward and actually talk about the agent build, the secret agent build that I've been developing. The name of the build has already been decided. In fact, I usually come up with a name, tie it to a sort of role-playing character that I enjoyed playing in my past experiences with MMORPGs or RPGs, and then try and build a build around that. So we've already done the Paladin, which of course was one of my favorite characters when I played World of Warcraft. And now we're going to do a character that I played when I played Rift, and that is the Saboteur. So the Saboteur is all about traps and, you know, sort of guerrilla tactics, hitting the enemy, then disappearing, and then going in for the attack, doing lots of burst damage and escaping, and relatively trying to remain unseen. So the basis for that build currently is Smart Cover and a Seeker Mine. And then I'm also running the Tactical Link, so whenever needed, I can get an additional boost to damage and critical hit chance. Now, one of the things that I wanted to really do with this build was make it versatile, just like the Paladin build was as well. I wanted it to be modifiable on the fly, and one of the things that came to mind, it was kind of an epiphany. I was like, you know what, we're all so caught up in, like, this is my build, these are the abilities I run, and then these are the mods I run alongside of those abilities. The thing is, all of the attributes and equipment mod bonuses that you get that tie into, say, Smart Cover or Seeker Mine aren't always specific. You know, they're not specific for a mod within that ability. So if I have a bonus that applies to the Seeker Mine, it applies to any of the modifications that I decide to equip, and the same goes for the Smart Cover. If I want to run Trapper, or if I want to run, you know, a Recharger or Concealment, I'm still going to get those benefits because that mod or that attribute bonus applies to the Smart Cover as a whole. So my big thing with the Saboteur was to make sure that I was willing to, on the fly, alter modifications for different scenarios. So a little bit of a thought process here, okay? The base modification for the Saboteur class is going to be the Trapper. What the Trapper does is it allows me to actually deploy cover. You know, say we got an enemy, oopsie, helps if I press the right button here. Say we've got an enemy hiding out behind this cover here, and I'm in the middle of a firefight. So I go ahead and pop cover on that. If the enemy takes cover on that cover, after several seconds, they'll have a debuff applied to them. That's going to allow them to do less damage and allow me to do more damage to them. At that point, I can go ahead and send out something like my Seeker Mine with the Air Burst and just wreak havoc on them. So that's the basis for this Saboteur class. Now, not all of the enemies that you encounter in the game are actually going to take cover. You know, that's something we have to consider in this situation. Some of them, like the much larger boss enemies of the heavies, they don't use cover whatsoever. So in a situation like that, where maybe I'm targeting a single enemy, I might switch to something like concealment, or maybe I'll even swap over to recharger to get myself additional health and, you know, skill cooldowns decrease while I'm dealing with the boss. Equally, I can alter my Seeker Mine. So the Seeker Mine Airburst is great, right? When I've got a large amount of enemies or a small group of enemies in an area, I don't want to do damage to multiple targets. I can set them on fire, I can deploy this thing. But say we're past that point, and we're just dealing with the individual boss right now. Using the Seeker Mine, or even using something like the Cluster or the Gas Charge, isn't actually going to be that effective. Which is where you need to remember that in some cases, the base version of an ability might actually be the best option. If we look at the damage, the total explosive damage for the Cluster, 12,000 roughly, and 12,000 roughly for the Airburst. If we go back to the base damage on the base attachment, 41,896. This is a direct Seeker grenade essentially. This is far more effective at dealing with a single target boss, like a named boss in the DZ, someone who doesn't take cover, or even in a daily hard mode or challenge mode mission. So you have to be willing to bounce around with these modifications. That was something I wanted to make very clear for myself when I started building this class, was to make sure that I didn't let myself get tied down by 1 or 2 sets of modifications, and I was really able to adapt on the fly, because that's what a Saboteur is all about. They've got a whole plethora of tricks in their bag, and they know when to use them and where to use them to be most effective, and that is the premise behind using those different modifications. Now, one of the other things that I did attempt to do is really build talents that would directly benefit that Seeker Mine, most importantly. I didn't want to worry too much about what's going out the smart cover. I just wanted to be able to deal higher damage and have, you know, like really crazy burst damage with that Seeker Mine to make it as effective as I possibly can. Now, this is all, as I said, work in progress. I'm still really developing this. None of it is finished, and I don't actually know how effective it's going to be when I try and stack it all. I've had very little time to test it. So we're running Demolition Expert, which killing a hostile with an explosive will increase explosive damage by 40% for 15 seconds. We're also running Chain Reaction, damage multiple hostiles with an explosion to apply 40% more damage from the blast. And then we're also running, in the case of the Airburst, applying burn to any target triggers a 30% chance to apply the effect to all targets within 10 meters. So the idea of really stacking all of these things to make sure that in any given scenario, regardless of the modification I'm running on that Seeker Mine, I can get a huge boost to overall damage, or the radius at which the damage affects the enemies in the area. And then last, I've thrown in Shock and Awe. Suppress the hostile to increase movement speed by 25% for 10 seconds. This is something I've tooled around with in the past, Shock and Awe, and I've come to really fall in love with it, and I think it makes sense for this particular build, because, like I said, sometimes you're going to want to get in and then get out. So if in a situation where I don't finish an enemy, or there's one enemy left over in a group of enemies that I've attacked with my Seeker Mine and my cover debuff, I may be able to then suppress them with the Caduceus and then escape more rapidly. That 25% increase to movement speed is quite substantial. Believe it or not, it's extremely substantial, and it really makes a difference when dodging and, you know, sort of doing the bob and weave away from enemy bullets while trying to escape to a better cover position. So really stoked about the Saboteur build so far, guys. I've been using it in the DZ, but one of the issues I have with the build right now is I often have been running with just myself and my brother, and it is definitely a build in most cases when running higher level content where you're going to want to have a healer nearby. I mean, that's just kind of the case with any of this stuff, is like not having a healer becomes very noticeable very quickly. And as I was the primary healer for my fire team in most cases when running with just my brother, that's something that I'm slightly concerned about. But I do have other members in the squads that I play with when I play with a larger squad who have healing capacity, so I feel like it's going to be a build that fits really well within group play. As it goes for a solo build, I'm not entirely sold on it just yet. One of the other bigger things to consider too is the tweaking of my skill power. Like, do I want to start to drop DPS and boost skill power to make those abilities far more effective than they already are? Or do I want to continue to make them sort of just the tricks and the traps, and then use my DPS and my primary weapons as, you know, the finishing tool, sort of the blade, as if I was a Saboteur with a bag of tricks and a couple of razor-sharp daggers? A lot of work going on with this build. Either way, I think it's going to be a wicked fun build to come out with. There are so many people out there right now just really hellbent on the best DPS build, the best tank build. No one's really sitting down and looking at the options you have to build really cool agent builds that could potentially still do just as much damage as your, average DPS or damage build, but will allow you to have a lot of fun and play the game in a more unique way along the way. We'll see how it all comes together, and I hope in the coming weeks that I will be able to put together an agent build video for you guys regarding this build. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of gear acquisition. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of testing those talents. And I'm very much looking forward to putting it all together and seeing how it comes out in the end. Even if it's not a 100% successful build, I'm still going to share it with you guys because I think it is a fun build to mess around with nonetheless. And I do believe there are a lot of you out there who have the mindset and the the knowledge to maybe take a build like that and make it work for you in a different way. And that would be a hell of a lot of fun to see that build spawn a whole line of other builds by you guys. That's going to do it, guys. Just a little bit of an update regarding my agent, all of that goodness. If you have any other questions for me regarding my weapons, anything that I didn't answer here, or any questions regarding that build, thought processes that you might like to share regarding how you might build a Saboteur build of your own, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.